You're uninvited from the planning meetings. In fact, I don't want you involved at all anymore. Just stay out of it." Those words from my daughter Zahra's lips cut deeper than any knife could. 25 years of unconditional love, and this is what it had come to. Being tossed aside like yesterday's newspaper the moment I voiced a single concern about her fiancé's mother taking over everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stood there in Sabine Duchamp's upscale wedding planning office, the taste of rejected motherhood bitter on my tongue. The room seemed to spin as Zahra's words hung in the air between us. Valencia Blackwood, my future in-law with her perfectly, highlighted chestnut hair and designer blazer, smirked from behind my daughter. I'd spent my entire life making sure Zahra never went without, working double shifts, sacrificing dating opportunities, even selling my grandmother's antique jewelry collection so she could attend that prestigious art program in Europe. And now, I wasn't even allowed to help plan her wedding, a wedding for which I'd already secretly paid the $45,000 deposit on the exclusive Herondale Estate. "Fine," I whispered, my voice steadier than I expected. "If that's what you want." My name is Lorelei Thornfield, and until 3 months ago, I thought I understood what it meant to be a good mother. I'd raised Zahra on my own in our modest home in Clearwater Cove after my husband Nolan walked out when she was just 4 years old. He couldn't handle the responsibility, he'd said. What he meant was he couldn't handle a child who wasn't biologically his. I'd never told Zahra the truth, that I'd adopted her as a newborn when her teenage birth mother couldn't care for her, that Nolan had left specifically because he couldn't accept raising someone else's mistake. He'd wanted his own children, but we discovered I couldn't have them, and the adoption had been my desperate attempt to save our marriage. Instead, it ended it. None of that mattered to me, though. From the moment I first held Zahra, with her, shock of dark curls and eyes like moonlit pools, she was mine. Every parent-teacher conference, every late-night fever, every heartbreak and triumph, I was there, building my life around giving her the stability and love she deserved. When Zahra brought home Kieran Blackwood 6 months ago, I was thrilled to see her so happy. He seemed kind, ambitious, and clearly adored her. But then came Valencia, his mother, who from our first meeting made it clear that the Blackwoods operated in a different social sphere than we did. "Oh, Clearwater Cove? How quaint. We summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen," she'd said during our first dinner together, eyeing my carefully prepared salmon with the enthusiasm of someone being served roadkill. I'd brushed it off. This wasn't about me or Valencia. It was about Zahra and Kieran's happiness. But then the wedding planning began, and everything changed. It started subtly. Valencia suggested they meet just us girls to discuss themes. Then she began scheduling appointments during my hospital shifts, knowing I couldn't attend. I'm a pediatric nurse. Children depend on me showing up. But each time I missed a meeting, Zahra grew more distant, as if my absence confirmed some narrative Valencia was spinning about my lack of interest. The final straw came yesterday. I'd taken a rare day off to attend the venue selection meeting at Sabine Duchamp's office. I'd been saving for years, tucking away every extra penny into what I called my Zahra's Future Fund. Originally intended for graduate school if she wanted it, I'd decided her dream wedding was just as worthy. When I arrived at Sabine's office, they were already discussing the Herondale Estate, the most exclusive venue in 3 counties with a 2-year waiting list. "It's perfect," Zahra was saying, her eyes shining. "But Mom, it's way beyond our budget." Before I could respond, Valencia jumped in. "Well, Kieran's father and I could contribute more, but honestly, we're already covering so much." She gave me a pointed look that clearly said, "Unlike you." "Actually," I said, pulling out my checkbook, "I've been saving for something special like this. If Herondale is what you want, I can make it happen." The shock on Valencia's face was almost worth the years of scrimping and saving. The vacations, not taken. The car not upgraded. The leaky roof patched instead of replaced. But then Valencia recovered. Her voice honeyed poison. "Oh, Lorelei, that's so sweet. But do you really think Herondale is appropriate? It's so formal. And with your side of the guest list being more, how shall I put this, down to earth? Wouldn't something more casual be better?" I felt my face flush. My friends and family can handle formal just fine. "Mom, don't start," Zahra sighed. "Valencia has been doing all this research and she knows what works." "Research?" I asked. "Zahra, I've been to Herondale. My friend Elias hosted a charity gala there last year. It's stunning, and it would be perfect." Valencia's eyes narrowed. "You attended a gala at Herondale? As what, the catering staff?" The room went silent. I waited for Zahra to defend me, to say something, anything, to acknowledge the insult. Instead, she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Mom, please don't make this difficult. Valencia has connections and she's just trying to help." "Zahra, no." My daughter's voice turned cold. "You always do this. You always think you know better than everyone, but you don't understand how these things work." "These things? You mean weddings?" "Zahra, I've been planning for your wedding since—" "That's exactly the problem. You've been planning your version of my wedding. Valencia is actually listening to what I want." The words hit like a physical blow. 25 years of birthday parties planned to perfection, of saving magazine clippings of wedding dresses I thought she might like someday, of quiet nights discussing her future dreams, all erased with one dismissive statement. "Zahra," Sabine interrupted gently, "the Herondale Estate requires a significant deposit today if we want to hold your date. Shall we discuss payment options?" I swallowed hard. "I can write a check right now." Valencia laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Lorelei, a check? For $45,000? Perhaps we should discuss more realistic options." The condescension in her voice made something inside me snap. I reached into my purse, pulled out my checkbook, and wrote the check without hesitation. "Herondale is my gift to Zahra," I said, handing it to Sabine. No strings attached. The shock on their faces should have been satisfying, but all I felt was hollow. I'd always imagined this moment differently. My daughter hugging me with tears of joy, not staring at me with suspicion. "Mom, where did you get that kind of money?" Zahra asked. "I told you, I've been saving for years for your future. This is part of it." Valencia recovered quickly. "How resourceful of you. Well, since that's settled, we should discuss the catering next. I've already reached out to Chef Anton at Le Cirque." I nodded, determined to stay involved. "I actually know someone at Harlow's who could—" "Mom," Zahra interrupted, her voice tight. "Valencia has this handled." "I'm just trying to help," I said. "Well, don't." The words came out sharp, definitive. "In fact, I think it would be better if you just let us handle everything from here." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What?" Zahra wouldn't meet my eyes. "You're making this difficult. You and Valencia clearly don't agree on anything, and I can't deal with the tension, so just step back, please." "Step back? From planning my only daughter's wedding?" "Yes." Her voice hardened. "You're uninvited from the planning meetings. In fact, I don't want you involved at all anymore. Just stay out of it." And that's how I found myself standing in Sabine Duchamp's office, effectively banned from my daughter's wedding planning, after writing a check for $45,000. As I walked out, Valencia's words followed me. "Don't worry, Lorelei. You can still show up on the big day and smile for pictures." I made it to my car before the tears came. That night, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by photo albums. Zahra's first steps, her kindergarten graduation, the science fair where she'd built a working volcano that erupted all over her dress, her high school prom, where I'd stayed up 3 nights in a row altering a secondhand gown to look like it came straight from a designer showroom. Throughout it all, one thing remained. Constant. It had always been just the two of us against the world. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Until Kieran. Until Valencia. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Elias Montgomery, my oldest friend and the chief of pediatrics at the hospital where I worked. "How did it go today?" he asked. I stared at the message, unsure how to compress my heartbreak into a text. Instead, I called him. "Lori?" His voice was warm, concerned. "What happened?" The whole story poured out of me. Valencia's subtle undermining, Zahra's dismissal, the check I'd written, and finally, my banishment from all future planning. "She doesn't want me involved at all, Elias. After everything." There was a long pause. "Lori, I've never told you this, but I've always thought you were too good a mother." "What does that even mean?" "It means you've given that girl everything, often at your own expense. You've never asked for recognition or gratitude. And now she's taking you for granted. She's just excited about the wedding, and Valencia has her ear right now." "Valencia," Elias said with distaste. "The woman who asked if you were catering staff at my gala?" I winced at the memory. "You heard that?" "Everyone heard it. What you might not have heard was what she said after you stepped away. She told her friend that you were new money trying to play in spaces you don't belong." I laughed bitterly. "New money? Elias? I drive a 12-year-old Honda." "Exactly." Which is why what she said next was even more ridiculous. She claimed you'd married wealthy, divorced better, and were living off your ex-husband's money. My laughter died. Nolan left us with nothing but debt. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, I know that. But Valencia's spinning a narrative, and unfortunately, Zahra seems to be believing it. I closed my eyes, the pain sharp and fresh. "What do I do?" "That depends," he said carefully. "Are you ready to stop being the sacrificial lamb?" "What does that mean?" "It means, Lori, that you have options you haven't considered. Options that might remind your daughter exactly who you are and what you've done for her." "Like what?" "Like the fact that the check you wrote today wasn't the full extent of your resources." I fell silent, my mind racing to the trust fund. My grandmother had left me, the one I'd never touched except for Zahra's education, the one that had grown substantially over the years through careful management. "How did you know about that?" I asked finally. "Because I was there when your grandmother made you promise not to touch it until you were ready to live for yourself, not just for others." My grandmother Vivian had been a force of nature. Widowed young, she'd built a successful business in an era when women weren't supposed to do such things. She'd left me a trust that I'd kept secret, partly out of respect for her wish that I use it to build my own dreams, not just fund others. "It's not just the money, Elias," I said finally. "There's something else. Something about Herondale Estate." "What about it?" I took a deep breath. My grandmother was Vivian Herondale. The silence on the other end was deafening. "Say that again," Elias said finally. "The Herondale Estate was my grandmother's home. After she died, my cousin Thaddeus turned it into an event venue to generate income rather than sell it outright. The family trust still owns the property, which means technically I'm part owner." "Lori," Elias said slowly, "are you telling me that you just wrote a $45,000 check to rent a venue that you partially own?" "Yes." "And your daughter has no idea?" "No. I never told her about my grandmother's side of the family. After Nolan left, I wanted to raise her without any sense of entitlement. I wanted her to value hard work and kindness over money and status. So I just never mentioned it. Well, Elias said after a moment, perhaps it's time for some truths to come to light. The idea bloomed slowly, like a night-blooming flower unfurling in the darkness. What if I did reclaim my heritage? What if I stopped downplaying who I was and where I came from? What are you suggesting? I asked. I'm suggesting that perhaps your daughter and future mother-in-law need a reality check, and you're in a unique position to provide one. I thought about Valencia's smug face, about Zahra's dismissal, about the years I'd spent ensuring my daughter never felt the absence of her father or biological mother. I need to make some calls, I said finally. That's my girl, Elias replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The next morning, I called my cousin Thaddeus Herondale, current manager of the estate and executor of the family trust. Lorelei? He said, surprised. This is unexpected. You haven't called in years. I know, and I'm sorry about that, but I need a favor, Thad. It's about the estate. What about it? My daughter is planning her wedding there. She has no idea about our family connection, he chuckled. That explains the booking under Thornfield. I thought the name was familiar. So what can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need you to cancel the reservation. Cancel it? Lori, and I need you to make it look like it was booked out from under us by someone with more influence. The silence stretched between us. You want to sabotage your own daughter's wedding venue? No, I said firmly. I want to teach her a lesson about making assumptions and about the people who truly have her back. I'm listening. As I outlined my plan, a mix of emotions swirled through me. Guilt, anticipation, and beneath it all, a strange sense of liberation. For 25 years, I'd been the reliable, selfless mother who never demanded recognition. Perhaps it was time to reveal that there was more to Lorelei Thornfield than met the eye. 3 days later, my phone exploded with calls and texts from Zahra. I let them go to voicemail, each one more frantic than the last. Mom, call me back. Something terrible has happened. Mom, seriously, why aren't you answering? We've lost the venue. Mom, I know you're mad about what happened at Sabine's, but I really need your help. Please call me back. Finally, I answered. Mom? Zahra's voice was thick with tears. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. At work, I said calmly. Some of us don't have the luxury of dropping everything for wedding emergencies. What's wrong? What's wrong? Everything's wrong. Herondale Estate canceled our reservation. They said some ambassador's daughter swooped in and booked the entire month. I made a noise of sympathy, mentally thanking Thaddeus for his creative explanation. That's awful, sweetheart. What did Valencia say? She's furious. She's calling everyone she knows trying to fix it, but it's not working. The deposit check hasn't even cleared yet, so at least you'll get your money back, but… My money? I repeated softly. What? You said I'll get my money back. I thought you didn't want me involved. Silence hung between us. Mom, that's not fair. I just meant… I know exactly what you meant, Zahra. And while I'm sorry about the venue, I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. I thought, maybe you could call them, or help us find somewhere else? I closed my eyes, steeling myself against the pleading in her voice. I thought, Valencia had this handled. Isn't that what you said? Mom, please, don't be petty. The word hit me like a slap. Petty. After everything, that's how she saw me. I need to get back to work, I said. Let me know if there's anything specific I can help with. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was Blackwood, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. "Mrs. Thornfield," he said formally. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, surprised. "Of course. Is everything all right?" He waited until we were seated in my living room before answering. "Not really, no. Zahra is devastated about losing the venue, and Valencia is." He trailed off. "Go on," I prompted. "She's making it worse," he admitted. "She's telling Zahra that this is somehow your fault, that you must have said something to offend the venue owners." I raised an eyebrow. "And does Zahra believe her?" Kieran looked down at his hands. "I don't know, but I don't. Which is why I'm here." "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Thornfield, I love your daughter more than anything, but I'm starting to see that she takes certain things for granted. Certain people. Like me, you mean?" "Yes." He met my eyes directly. "Valencia has been poisoning things between you two since day one. I tried to stay out of it, but after seeing how she treated you at Sabine's office, and now this venue drama." He shook his head. "It's not right." I studied him carefully. "What exactly are you asking, Kieran?" "I'm asking for your help. Not just with finding a new venue, but with showing Zahra the truth about Valencia, about who really cares for her." An unexpected ally. I hadn't seen that coming. "Why now?" I asked. "Because yesterday, Valencia suggested we scale back the wedding significantly. Fewer guests, cheaper venue, but specifically said we should still cut your side of the list. When I objected, she said some things about you that I know aren't true." "What things?" "That you've been living off alimony for years, that you're jealous of Zahra's relationship with her, that you've always used guilt to control Zahra." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I never received a penny of alimony. Nolan disappeared to avoid paying child support. I raised Zahra on my own, working multiple jobs." "I know," Kieran said quietly. "Zahra told me all about your sacrifices when we first started dating. That's why I can't understand why she's letting Valencia manipulate her like this." I considered my options. Kieran's involvement could change everything or complicate it further. "What do you suggest?" I asked finally. "I think we need to meet. You, me, Zahra, and Valencia. Clear the air. And I have a suggestion for a new venue, but I wanted to run it by you first." "What venue?" "The Wildwood Chateau. It's not as well known as Herondale, but it's beautiful, historic, and actually has an opening on our date due to a last-minute cancellation." I felt a jolt of recognition. The Wildwood Chateau, my grandmother's private residence, separate from the main Herondale Estate, the place where she'd taught me to paint, to appreciate fine art and literature, to believe in myself when the world seemed determined to break me. "How did you hear about Wildwood?" I asked carefully. "Dr. Montgomery suggested it. He said it might have special significance for your family." "Elias. Of course." "It does," I admitted, "though it's been years since I've been there." Kieran leaned forward. "Mrs. Thornfield, would you be willing to meet us there tomorrow? Valencia thinks we're just viewing another potential venue. She has no idea you'll be there." The trap was being set, but was I ready to spring it? "Yes," I said finally. "I'll be there." The next day, I drove to Wildwood Chateau with a strange mix of nostalgia and determination. The stone building rose against the autumn sky, its ivy-covered walls and mullioned windows exactly as I remembered. I parked my Honda next to Kieran's sleek BMW and took a deep breath. Inside, the great hall with its grand staircase and massive fireplace still took my breath away. Family portraits lined the walls, my ancestors, my heritage, my legacy, and at the center, above the mantel, was a portrait of my grandmother Vivienne, regal and formidable in her riding clothes. "Mrs. Thornfield." A familiar voice echoed through the hall. I turned to see Freya Kincaid, Valencia's estranged sister and the estate's current caretaker. Freya, I said warmly, it's been too long. She embraced me, whispering, Thaddeus, filled me in. Are you sure about this? More sure than I've been about anything in years. The sound of voices drew our attention to the entrance. Valencia entered first, imperious in a cream suit, followed by Zahra and Kieran. What is this place? It's practically a museum, Valencia was saying. And why is it even available on such short notice? There must be something wrong with… She stopped abruptly when she saw me. What is she doing here? She demanded, turning to Kieran. Before he could answer, Zahra stepped forward. Mom, what's going on? I met her gaze steadily. I heard you lost your venue. I thought I might be able to help. Valencia scoffed. Help? By suggesting this dusty old mansion? Really, Lorelei, you are out of your depth. Freya stepped forward, her voice cool. Actually, Valencia, Lorelei is exactly in her depth here. Valencia froze, finally noticing her sister. Freya? What are you doing here? I manage this property, Freya replied. Have for the last decade. You work as a caretaker? Valencia's voice dripped with disdain. How fitting. Executive manager, actually, Freya corrected. And I answer, directly to the family trust, of which Lorelei is a significant beneficiary. Valencia's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I gestured to the portrait above the fireplace. That's my grandmother, Vivian Herondale. This was her private residence. The Herondale Estate? That was her family home. The shock on Valencia's face was almost comical. Zahra stared at me in disbelief. Mom? What is she talking about? It's true, I said quietly. My mother was Caroline Herondale, Vivian's only daughter. I grew up between here and the main estate until my parents died in a car accident when I was 16. After that, I lived with my grandmother until college. But you're a nurse, Valencia sputtered. You live in a modest house in Clearwater Cove. Yes, I agreed. By choice. My grandmother left me a substantial trust when she died, but she made me promise to use it wisely, for things that truly mattered. I used some for Zahra's education, but otherwise, I've lived simply because that's what I wanted. Zahra stepped forward, her eyes wide. Why didn't you ever tell me? All these years. At first, it was because you were too young to understand. Then, after Nolan left, I was determined to raise you to value character over wealth, to appreciate what you earned rather than what was given to you, and I think I succeeded, until recently. What's that supposed to mean? Zahra demanded. It means, Kieran said gently, that your mother has been watching you choose status and approval from my mother over the woman who sacrificed everything for you. Valencia recovered quickly, anger replacing shock. This is ridiculous. Even if what you say is true, Lorelei, you've clearly been estranged from your family for years. You wrote that check for Herondale as if you were an outsider. No, I corrected. I wrote that check knowing exactly what I was doing. I was willing to pay full price for my granddaughter's wedding at my family's estate, rather than use my position for special treatment. That's the difference between us, Valencia. You use your connections to elevate yourself. I use mine to elevate others. Is it true? Zahra asked, her voice small. About the Herondale estate? Did we lose it because I had it canceled? I finished for her. Yes. The silence that followed was deafening. You… What? Zahra whispered. I had Thaddeus, my cousin who manages the property, cancel the reservation. I wanted you to understand that actions have consequences, that treating people as disposable when they've given everything for you isn't acceptable, even from my daughter. Tears filled Zahra's eyes. How could you do that to me? The real question, Freya interjected, is how could you do what you did to your mother? Uninviting her from your wedding planning after she wrote a $45,000 check? Choosing Valencia's shallow approval over your mother's lifetime of love? Valencia turned on her sister. Stay out of this, Freya. Family loyalty clearly means nothing to you. That's rich coming from you, Freya retorted. You've spent your entire life putting on airs, pretending to be something you're not. At least Lorelei had the integrity to live authentically, to raise her daughter with values rather than vanity. Mom, Zahra said, ignoring the sister's argument. I don't understand. All these years, why pretend to be ordinary? The word stung more than I expected. Is that how you see me? Ordinary? Just a nurse who doesn't understand how these things work? Zahra flushed. That's not what I meant. But it is, I said softly. It's exactly what you meant. And it's what Valencia has been encouraging you to believe, that I'm somehow less than, less worthy, less knowledgeable, less important. That's not true, Valencia protested, but her eyes shifted away. Isn't it? Kieran challenged. I've heard what you say about Lorelei when she's not around. How you mock her job, her house, her clothes. How you've been telling Zahra that her mother is holding her back from the life she deserves. Valencia's face hardened. And what exactly have you been doing, Kieran? Spying on me? Recording private conversations? Kieran's silence was answer enough. You have recordings? Zahra asked, her voice barely audible. Yes, he admitted. I didn't know what else to do. I saw what was happening, how you were being manipulated against your mother, but you wouldn't listen to me. Play them, Zahra demanded. Zahra, honey, you don't need to hear, Valencia began. Play them, Zahra repeated, her voice firmer. Kieran pulled out his phone, pressed a few buttons, and Valencia's voice filled the room. Honestly, Zahra, you need to establish boundaries with your mother. She's living vicariously through you, trying to control your wedding because her own life is so pathetically empty. A nurse? Please. She could have been so much more if she had any ambition, but instead, she's clinging to you because you're all she has. It's sad, really. Zahra's face drained of color. When was this? After the bridal shower, Kieran said. When your mother left early for her shift. Play another, Zahra said, her voice hollow. Valencia's voice again. Don't invite her to the cake tasting. She'll just embarrass you with her pedestrian tastes. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor. The less involved she is, the better your wedding will be. Besides, she probably can't afford to contribute much anyway. We're carrying the financial burden here. That was the day before you told your mother she was uninvited from planning, Kieran said quietly. Tears streamed down Zahra's face now. And I believed her. I let her convince me that you were the problem, that you were trying to take over. There's more, Kieran said. I think we've heard enough, Valencia snapped, reaching for his phone. I put my hand on Zahra's shoulder. There's something else you should know, something I should have told you years ago. The great hall of Wildwood Chateau fell silent as all eyes turned to me. In that moment, I felt the weight of 2.5 decades of secrets pressing down on me. What is it, Mom? Zahra asked, her voice small and uncertain. I took a deep breath. Nolan didn't leave because he couldn't handle responsibility. He left because he couldn't accept that you weren't biologically his. Zahra's eyes widened. What? We had been trying to have a baby for years, I continued. Eventually, we discovered I couldn't conceive. Nolan was devastated. He blamed me, though he never said it directly. When I suggested adoption, he reluctantly agreed. I looked at my daughter, seeing the baby I'd fallen in love with instantly all those years ago. Your birth mother was 16, scared, and alone. Her parents had disowned her, and the father wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. When I first held you, I knew you were meant to be mine. So I'm adopted, Zahra whispered. Yes. And Nolan tried. He really did. for almost 4 years, but he never bonded with you the way I did. He kept waiting to feel like your father, and when that feeling didn't come, he resented both of us. He said he wanted his real child, not someone else's leftover. That's horrible, Kieran said, his face tight with anger. Yes, it was. I agreed. The night he left, he gave me an ultimatum. Give you up for adoption again, or he'd leave. I chose you, without hesitation. Valencia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Well, isn't this all very dramatic and convenient? Now you're the martyred single mother who sacrificed everything? Please. Actually, Freya interjected, I remember when Lorelei adopted Zahra. I was visiting grandmother Vivian when Lorelei brought the baby to meet her. Vivian offered to set up a trust just for the baby's care, but Lorelei refused. She said she wanted to provide for her daughter, herself. Zahra looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you ever tell me? At first, because you were too young. Then, because I was afraid. Afraid you'd feel unwanted or abandoned if you knew the truth. And after a while, it just became easier to maintain the story we'd always lived with. And the trust? My grandmother's money? Why hide that? I sighed. That was complicated. Part of it was pride. After Nolan left, I was determined to prove I could raise you on my own, without falling back on family money. And part of it was principle. Vivian had very specific ideas about how the trust should be used. She wanted me to use it to build a life for myself, not just for others. But you used it for my education, Zahra said. Yes, because that mattered. Because giving you opportunities was more important to me than anything else. Valencia made a dismissive sound. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the fact that you deliberately sabotaged your daughter's wedding venue. What kind of mother does that? The kind, Kieran said firmly, who's finally standing up for herself after years of selfless giving. Exactly, Freya agreed. And speaking of venues, I believe there's still the matter of where this wedding will take place. All eyes turned to me again. Wildwood Chateau is available, I said softly. And yes, I own it. Or rather, I manage it as part of the family trust. It's where I spent my summers as a child. It's where I learned to paint, to appreciate beauty, to believe in myself. Zahra stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. All those paintings in our house. The landscapes with the stone chateau in the distance. We're of this place, I confirmed. My memories of it, at least. You're an artist? Valencia asked, unable to keep the incredulity from her voice. Among other things, I replied calmly. Though I set that aside when I became a mother, some sacrifices are worth making for the people you love. Zahra took a hesitant step toward me. Mom, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything right now, I told her. Just listen. Wildwood Chateau can be yours for the wedding, free of charge. It's my gift to you, regardless of whether you want me involved in the planning. But I want you to know that everything I've ever done, every choice I've made, has been with your happiness and well-being in mind. Even canceling Herondale? She asked, her voice small. Even that, I acknowledged. Because sometimes loving someone means holding them accountable when they've lost their way. And you have, Zahra. The daughter I raised would never have allowed anyone to speak about her mother the way Valencia has spoken about me. Valencia stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury. This is emotional manipulation, plain and simple. Just because you've revealed some dramatic family, history doesn't change the fact that you've been lying to your daughter her entire life. If anyone should be holding someone accountable, it's Zahra holding you accountable. Kieran shook his head. Valencia, that's enough. No, it's not, she snapped. I've worked tirelessly to plan this wedding, to give Zahra the celebration she deserves. And now her mother swoops in with this. This theatrical revelation? It's pathetic. Freya stepped closer to her sister, her voice low and dangerous. The only thing pathetic here is your transparent attempt to maintain control. You've been caught in your manipulations, Valencia. It's over. Valencia turned to Zahra, her voice suddenly pleading. Zahra, darling, can't you see what's happening? She's trying to buy your love back after lying to you for years. Are you really going to forgive that so easily? Zahra looked between us, tears streaming down her face. I don't. I can't. And then she turned and ran, her footsteps echoing through the grand hall and out into the gardens beyond. Kieran moved to follow her, but I placed a hand on his arm. Give her a moment, I said quietly. She needs time to process everything. He nodded reluctantly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thornfield. I never meant for things to explode like this. I know, I assured him. And please, call me Lorelei. Valencia huffed indignantly. Well, this has been quite the performance. But if you think this changes anything— It changes everything, Freya interrupted. It's over, Valencia. Your days of driving wedges between Zahra and her mother are finished. We'll see about that, Valencia replied coldly, and stalked out of the chateau, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. When she was gone, Freya turned to me with a sigh. She always did have to have the last word. Thank you, I said simply, for being here, for speaking up. She squeezed my hand. Long overdue, if you ask me. I've watched Valencia manipulate and scheme her way through life for too long. It was time someone called her out. Kieran cleared his throat. I should go find Zahra. The rose garden, I suggested. Through those French doors and down the stone path. It was always my favorite place to think when I was troubled. After Kieran left, Freya and I stood, in silence for a moment, surrounded by the echoes of the past and the uncertainty of the future. Do you think she'll forgive me? I asked finally. For the lies? For canceling the venue? For all of it? Freya gave me a gentle smile. She's your daughter, Lorelei. Despite everything, despite Valencia's influence, I saw the way she looked, at you. There was hurt there, yes, but also love. Deep love. Give her time. Outside in the rose garden, Zahra sat on a stone bench, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trellises, casting dappled shadows across her face. She didn't look up when Kieran approached, but she didn't turn away either when he sat beside her. I don't know what's real anymore, she whispered. My whole life feels like a lie. Kieran took her hand gently. Not all of it. Your mother's love for you. That's real. It's always been real. She lied to me about who I am, about where I came from. Yes, he agreed. But think about why. She wanted you to feel secure, to never question whether you were wanted or loved, and she wanted you to grow up valuing the right things, not wealth or status, but character and kindness. Zahra wiped her tears with the back of her hand. And I failed spectacularly at that, didn't I? The moment Valencia started showing interest in me, telling me I deserved more, that I could be part of their world. I threw my mother aside, like she was nothing. We all make mistakes, Kieran said softly. The question is what we do to fix them. How do I fix this? She asked, her voice breaking. How do I make up for the things I said to her, for how I treated her? By remembering who you really are, came a gentle voice from behind them. By being the daughter I raised you to be, compassionate, strong, and brave enough to admit when you're wrong. Zahra turned to see me standing at the edge of the garden, hesitant to intrude but unwilling to stay away. Mom, she said, and the word held a universe of emotion. I walked slowly toward her, giving her space to retreat if she wanted. But instead, she stood and closed the distance between us, collapsing into my arms with a sob that seemed to release years of pent-up feelings. "I'm so sorry," she cried against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." I held her tightly, my own tears falling freely now. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I've been horrible. The things I said to you, the way I treated you." "Shh," I soothed, stroking her hair. "We both made mistakes. I should have told you the truth long ago. About your adoption, about my family, about everything." She pulled back to look at me, her eyes red but clear. "Why didn't you? Why live like we did when you could have given us so much more?" I led her back to the bench, sitting beside her while Kieran tactfully stepped away to give us privacy. "When your father left," I began, I was devastated. Not because I still loved him, that had faded long before, but because he had rejected you so completely. I became determined to prove that we didn't need him or anyone else, that I could give you everything you needed on my own. "But you had resources," Zahra said. "Grandmother's trust." "Which came with strings attached," I explained. Vivienne was a complicated woman. Brilliant, loving, but also controlling in her own way. She believed money should be earned or used for specific purposes. When she set up the trust, she stipulated that I could only access the full amount when I was ready to build my own dreams, not just support others. "But you used it for my education?" I smiled softly. "I found loopholes, small withdrawals that wouldn't trigger the main conditions. Your education was non-negotiable to me." "And our house in Clearwater Cove? Was that a choice too? Or necessity?" "Both," I admitted. "I could have afforded something grander, yes. But I wanted our home to be warm, comfortable, and completely ours. No staff, no pretense, just a place where we could be ourselves." Zahra looked around at the grandeur of Wildwood. "But this is part of who you are too." "It's part of my history," I clarified. "But who I am, who I became, is so much more than my family name or the trust fund I rarely used. I'm a mother who would do anything for her daughter. I'm a nurse who helps children heal. I'm an artist who still finds beauty in everyday moments. Those things matter more to me than any of this." Valencia made me feel like none of that was enough, Zahra said quietly. "Like I should be embarrassed by our life, by your job." She kept saying I deserved better, that I could do better. "And what do you think now?" I asked. Zahra looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "I think I had everything I ever needed, and I was too blind to see it." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstandings slowly lifting between us. "I don't deserve Wildwood," Zahra said finally. "Not after how I treated you." "It's not about deserving," I told her. "It's about love. This place is part of your heritage too, whether you knew it or not. And I would be honored to see you, married here, surrounded by the beauty that shaped me before you came along and gave my life its true purpose." Tears filled her eyes again. "Even after everything I said? After I banned you from the planning?" "Even after all of that," I confirmed. "Though I won't lie, that hurt more than anything ever has." "I was awful." She shook her head. "I let Valencia convince me that you were trying to take over, that your ideas were embarrassing, that you would make the wedding look cheap." "And now?" I asked. "Now I realize that everything genuine and meaningful in my life came from you. Not from status or appearances, but from love and sacrifice." She took my hands in hers. "I want you involved in every aspect of the wedding planning if you'll still do it. Not just as a guest, not just as the mother of the bride, but as my partner in creating something beautiful." I squeezed her hands. "I'd like that very much." "And Mom?" she added hesitantly. "I want to know everything about my birth mother, about your family, about your life before me. No more secrets, okay?" "No more secrets," I promised. though some of those stories might take a while to tell. We have time, she said, leaning her head on my shoulder, like she used to do as a child. From the other side of the garden, Kieran watched us with a gentle smile. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod of understanding and respect. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Valencia wouldn't give up her influence. Without a fight, and years of misunderstandings couldn't be healed in a single afternoon. But for the first time in a long while, I felt hope blooming like the roses around us, fragile but resilient, rooted in truth rather than pretense. As the sun began to set, casting the chateau in golden light, I realized something profound. In trying to protect Zahra from the complexities of our past, I had denied her the opportunity to truly know me, not just as her mother, but as a complete person with a history and identity beyond parenthood. Perhaps that had been my greatest mistake of all. But it wasn't too late to correct it. It wasn't too late for either of us to discover who we could be together, without secrets or assumptions standing between us. "Come on," I said, standing, and offering her my hand. "Let me show you the rest of Wildwood. There's a story behind every room, every painting, every view." "I'd like that," she said, taking my hand and rising to her feet. "I want to know all of them, all of you." As we walked together toward the chateau, Kieran falling into step beside us, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. Whatever came next, we would face it together, as a family, built not on biology or obligation, but on choice and love. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. True to my word, I opened every door of my past to Zahra, literally and figuratively. We spent hours exploring Wildwood Chateau, my childhood bedroom with its shelves of beloved books still intact, the music room where I'd struggled through piano lessons, the art studio in the tower where I'd discovered my passion for painting. "I can't believe you gave all this up," Zahra said as we stood on the balcony overlooking the estate's rolling hills and distant lake. "Not just the wealth, but this beauty, this history." "I didn't give it up entirely," I explained. "I just stepped away from it for a while. After Nolan left, I needed to find my own path, to discover who I was apart from my family name and expectations." "And who was that?" she asked, genuinely curious. I smiled, remembering those early days. A scared young mother who had no idea what she was doing, but who loved her daughter fiercely enough to figure it out. A woman determined to build something meaningful on her own terms. "You never remarried," Zahra observed. "Was that because of me?" "No," I said firmly. "It was a choice. I dated occasionally when you were older, but I never met anyone who felt right, who understood that you would always be my priority. And to be honest, after a while, I was content with my life as it was. My work, my art, my friends. You." We continued our tour, moving into the library with its soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. I pulled a leather-bound album from a drawer in the antique desk. "This is yours," I said, handing it to her. "I made it when you were still a baby." Zahra opened it carefully. Inside were newspaper clippings, legal documents, and handwritten notes, the story of her adoption, preserved in detail I had never shared before. "Your birth mother's name was Ivy," I said softly. "She was 16, artistic, intelligent, and overwhelmed. Her parents were strict and religious. When they discovered she was pregnant, they gave her an ultimatum: give up the baby or leave home forever." Zahra traced the blurry photograph of a young girl with her same dark curls. "Did she ever try to find me? To see how I turned out?" "No," I said gently. "The adoption was closed at her request. She was determined to move forward with her life, to go to college, to have the future her parents had planned for her. But she did write you a letter." I turned the page, revealing an envelope labeled "For my baby" in delicate handwriting. Zahra looked at me, uncertain. "Have you read it?" "No," I assured her. It was sealed when it was given to me, and I've respected that privacy all these years. It's yours to read or not, whenever you're ready. She nodded, closing the album without opening the letter. Not yet. Maybe. Maybe after the wedding. I need time to process everything else first. Of course, I agreed. There's no rush. We moved on to the matter of the wedding itself. With Valencia temporarily retreated to lick her wounds, Zahra and I began planning in earnest, starting fresh with a vision that honored both of our aesthetics rather than Valencia's ostentatious ideas. I never really wanted that over-the-top production she was pushing for, Zahra admitted as we sat in Wildwood's sunny breakfast room, sketching ideas and sipping tea. All those crystal chandeliers and imported flowers and 6-course meals. It felt like a performance, not a celebration. What do you want? I asked. Truly want? She thought for a moment. Something intimate, meaningful, beautiful, but not showy. A day that reflects who Kieran and I really are, not who Valencia thinks we should be. I smiled, recognizing the daughter I'd raised peeking through the influence Valencia had temporarily cast over her. Then that's exactly what we'll create. Together, we designed a ceremony that would take place in Wildwood's rose garden, with dinner and dancing in the glass conservatory, decorated with twinkling lights and seasonal blooms from the estate's own gardens. The guest list was trimmed from Valencia's bloated 300 to a meaningful 120, people who truly mattered to Zahra and Kieran, not social connections or business associates. Kieran, for his part, was visibly relieved by the change in direction. This feels right, he said when we showed him our plans. This feels like us. Not everything went smoothly, of course. 3 days after our confrontation at Wildwood, Valencia reappeared, armed with a new strategy. Darling, she cooed to Yastu. Zahra, when she visited our home in Clearwater Cove, pointedly ignoring my presence in my own living room. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I may have been a bit overzealous in my planning. If you want something simpler, more rustic, that's perfectly fine. The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl, but I bit my tongue, determined to let Zahra handle this herself. It's not about rustic versus formal, Valencia, Zahra replied calmly. It's about authenticity. Mom and I are designing a day that reflects who Kieran and I really are. Valencia's smile tightened. Of course, dear, though I must say, I'm a bit concerned about Kieran's father. He's very particular about appearances, and he was quite excited about the Herondale Estate. Wildwood Chateau is part of the Herondale family property, I interjected mildly. In fact, it's considered the more exclusive and historic section of the estate. Only family and their closest friends have ever celebrated there. Valencia's eyes narrowed. Yes, well, about that. These sudden revelations about your family background are certainly convenient. I hope you understand why some might find the timing suspicious. Mom has documentation of everything, Zahra said firmly. But frankly, it doesn't matter. I don't care if she owned a castle or a cardboard box. She's my mother, and I treated her terribly. That's what matters here. Valencia's facade cracked slightly. Zahra, sweetheart, you're being manipulated. Can't you see that? First, she hides her past from you for decades. Then she cancels your dream venue. Then she miraculously offers an even better one? It's textbook emotional manipulation. Before Zahra could respond, Kieran stepped into the room, having arrived for dinner. The only manipulation happening here is yours, Mother, he said quietly but firmly. And it stops now. Valencia turned. To him, shock evident on her face. Kieran, how dare you speak to me that way? How dare I? He echoed. How dare you continue trying to drive a wedge between Zahra and Lorelei after everything that's happened? How dare you show up here and attempt to cast doubt on Lorelei's integrity when you've been lying and manipulating from day one? I have only ever wanted what's best for you, Valencia protested. For both of you. No, Kieran corrected. You've wanted what makes you look best. There's a difference. Valencia's gaze hardened as she looked between the three of us. I see I'm outnumbered here. Fine. Have your quaint little wedding at Wildwood. But don't expect your father or me to contribute another penny toward it. We don't need your money, Zahra said simply. We never did. Well, Valencia sniffed, gathering her designer purse. I certainly hope you know what you're doing, both of you. I've only ever tried to elevate you, Zahra, to help you reach your full potential. My full potential isn't measured by the price tag of my wedding, Zahra replied. My mother taught me that. Valencia left without another word, the door closing firmly behind her. That went well, Kieran said with a wry smile. Do you think she'll come around? Zahra asked him. Accept that this is happening with or without her approval? Kieran sighed. Eventually, probably. My mother hates being excluded from anything. She considers socially significant. But it will be on our terms from now on, not hers. I squeezed Zahra's hand. Are you okay? She nodded. Better than okay. For the first time in months, I feel like myself again. The weeks that followed were busy but joyful. We replanned the entire wedding, canceling Valencia's extravagant vendors and choosing options that were beautiful but meaningful. I introduced Zahra to the family's trusted florist, who had been creating arrangements for Herondale events for decades. We selected a menu featuring seasonal local ingredients rather than Valencia's imported delicacies. And we found a dress. Not the overwrought designer gown Valencia had pushed, but a vintage-inspired creation that made Zahra look like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. Through it all, we talked, really talked, about everything. I shared stories of my childhood, of my parents before their tragic accident, of my complicated relationship with my grandmother Vivienne. Zahra told me about the moments she'd felt lost or confused about her identity growing up, questions she'd been afraid to ask, doubts she'd harbored. I always felt different somehow, she admitted one evening as we sat in my studio, where I'd begun painting again after years away from the canvas. Not just because I didn't look like you or Dad, but something deeper. Like I was missing some essential piece of who I was. I'm sorry, I said, setting down my brush. I thought I was protecting you by not telling you about the adoption. But perhaps I was just protecting myself from difficult conversations. Why did you start painting again? She asked, changing the subject but not really. I looked at the half-finished landscape on my easel, Wildwood Chateau in the distance, viewed from the lakeshore. Because it's part of who I am, a part I set aside for too long. Like your family history, she observed. Yes, I acknowledged. Like that. Do you regret it? The choices you made? The parts of yourself you hid away? I considered the question carefully. I regret not being more honest with you. But the rest? No. Being your mother has been the greatest privilege of my life, Zahra. Every choice I made was with your well-being at heart, even when those choices were imperfect. She smiled, a smile that reminded me so much of the little girl who used to run into my arms after school. I think I understand that now. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received an unexpected visitor at my home in Clearwater Cove. Freya Kincaid stood on my doorstep, looking uncharacteristically nervous. May I come in? She asked. There's something I need to tell you about Valencia. I ushered her inside, concern growing as I noted her serious expression. What's happened? Freya took a deep breath. Valencia is planning something. I'm not sure exactly what, but she's been making calls, talking to people from your past. I think she's trying to find something to use against you, to disrupt the wedding somehow. My stomach tightened. What could she possibly find? I've told Zahra everything now. Everything? Freya asked pointedly. I hesitated. There was one piece of the puzzle I had kept to myself, the identity of Zahra's birth father. Not because it was shameful, but because it wasn't my secret to tell. Almost everything, I amended. There are some details about Zahra's birth parents that I've kept private out of respect for their privacy. Freya nodded. Valencia mentioned something about tracking down the real parents. I thought you should know. Cold dread washed over me. If Valencia somehow found Ivy or the birth father, if she tried to insert them into Zahra's life without preparation or context. Thank you for telling me, I said, my mind racing. I need to talk to Zahra. Now. That evening, I sat Zahra down and told her the final piece of the story, one I had hoped could wait until after the wedding, when she had fully processed everything else. Your birth father, I said carefully, wasn't just some anonymous teenager. He was the son of a prominent family in the area. His parents were major donors to the hospital where your grandmother served on the board. Zahra's eyes widened. Who? I took a deep breath. His name was Alexander Blackwood. He was Valencia's younger brother. The color drained from Zahra's face. Valencia's brother? But that would make Kieran my cousin, I confirmed. Second cousin, technically. Alexander died in a boating accident a year after you were born. He never knew about the pregnancy. Ivy never told him. Does Valencia know? Zahra whispered. No, I said. No one in the Blackwood family ever knew. Ivy was adamant about keeping it secret, afraid of what they might do given their social standing. She chose a closed adoption, specifically to ensure they would never find out. But now Valencia is trying to find my birth parents, Zahra said, connecting the dots from my earlier explanation about Freya's warning. Yes, which means she might discover the truth, though it won't be easy. The records were sealed, and your grandmother made sure they stayed that way. Zahra sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing this bombshell revelation. Kieran and I are related, she said finally. We can't get married. It's wrong. Second cousins can legally marry in this state, I assured her. But more importantly, you didn't grow up as family. You met as adults, fell in love as adults. The biological connection is distant enough that it poses no ethical or medical concerns. But people will talk, she said, her voice small. Only if they know, I pointed out. And the only people who know right now are you and me. Even if Valencia somehow discovers the truth about Alexander, she would have no way of proving it without DNA tests, which would require your cooperation. So we just keep it secret? Forever? I took her hands in mine. That's up to you and Kieran. You could tell him and together decide how to handle it. Or you could wait until after the wedding, when Valencia can't use it to try to stop. Or you could choose never to tell anyone. It's your history, Zahra. Your identity. You get to decide what to do with it now. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. I need to think. I need space. Of course, I said, though it broke my heart to see her retreating just when we'd finally found our way back to each other. Take all the time you need. She left without another word, the door closing quietly behind her. For 3 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no visits. I respected her need for space, but each hour that passed felt like torture. Had I ruined everything again? Should I have kept this final secret buried forever? On the 4th day, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find not just Zahra, but Kieran as well, standing hand in hand on my porch. Can we come in? Zahra asked, her expression unreadable. I stepped aside, heart pounding, as they entered and sat together on my living room sofa. I told him, Zahra said simply. Everything. I looked at Kieran, trying to gauge his reaction. And? He met my gaze steadily. And nothing's changed. I love Zahra. The fact that we share some distant DNA doesn't change that. We've decided, Zahra continued, that we'll get married as planned. The biological connection is distant enough that there's no legal or medical reason not to. But we will get genetic counseling before having children, just to be absolutely certain. Relief washed over me. I think that's wise. We've also decided, Kieran added, that Valencia can never know. Not just because she might try to stop the wedding, but because, well, it would destroy her to learn that her brother had a child no one knew about, that the family never got to raise. I nodded, understanding completely. For all her faults, Valencia had loved her brother deeply. His death had left a wound that had never fully healed. There's one more thing, Zahra said. I want to read the letter, from Ivy. I think I'm ready now. I went to my bedroom and retrieved the album I'd shown her at Wildwood, returning to find her and Kieran sitting close together, drawing strength from each other. I handed her the album, open to the page with the sealed envelope. Whatever it says, I told her, remember that you are loved. By me, by Kieran, by all the people who have known and cherished you throughout your life. Zahra nodded carefully, breaking the seal on the envelope and unfolding the yellowed paper inside. She read in silence, tears gradually filling her eyes and spilling down her cheeks. When she finished, she passed the letter to Kieran, who read it quickly, his expression softening. She wasn't ready to be a mother, Zahra said finally. But she wanted me to have a good life, with parents who chose me, who wanted me desperately. She wrote that giving me up was the hardest and bravest thing she ever did. I nodded, my own eyes filling with tears. It was. And finding you, choosing you, loving you, that was the easiest and best thing I ever did. Zahra stood and crossed the room to embrace me, the letter still clutched in her hand. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for being the mother she hoped I would have. In that moment, with my daughter in my arms and her future husband watching with love and understanding, I knew that every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of joy and pain had led to exactly where we were meant to be. The wedding would proceed as planned. Valencia would never know the truth about her brother's child. And we, this imperfect, complicated, loving family, would move forward together, no longer bound by secrets or manipulations, but by the choices we made freely, with open hearts and clear eyes. 2 weeks later, I stood in the bridal suite of Wildwood Chateau, helping Zahra with the final touches of her wedding ensemble. The vintage-inspired gown flowed like liquid silver, catching the late afternoon light streaming through the leaded glass windows. In her dark hair, she wore a diamond and pearl hairpin that had been my grandmother's, something old and borrowed in one meaningful piece. Are you nervous? I asked, adjusting the delicate veil. She shook her head, a serene smile lighting her face. Not about marrying Kieran. That feels right, more right than anything ever has. But, I prompted, sensing there was more. But I am a little nervous about seeing Valencia. She's been so quiet since our confrontation. It feels like the calm before a storm. Valencia and her husband had maintained a chilly distance throughout the final wedding preparations, attending only the rehearsal dinner the night before with polite but cold formality. She had made no further attempts to interfere, which was almost more unsettling than her previous manipulations. Whatever happens, I assured Zahra, this day is about you and Kieran. Nothing and no one can change that. She nodded, taking a deep breath. I know. And Mom? Thank you. For everything. For loving me enough to cancel a venue I didn't even really want. For loving me enough to tell me the truth. All of it. Even when it was hard. For being exactly the mother I needed. Every step of the way. Tears threatened to ruin my carefully applied makeup. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zahra. Never doubt that. A knock at the door announced that it was time. The ceremony was about to begin. Together we made our way through Wildwood's grand hallways and out to the rose garden, where 120 guests waited under a canopy of twinkling lights and fragrant blossoms. At the entrance to the garden, Zahra took my arm. "I want you to walk me down the aisle," she said simply. My heart swelled. "It would be my honor." The music began, not the traditional wedding march Valencia had insisted upon, but a hauntingly beautiful piece composed by Kieran's younger brother, specifically for the occasion. As we started down the petal-strewn path, I caught sight of Valencia in the front row, her expression a careful mask of composure. For a moment, our eyes met, and something passed between us. Not forgiveness or understanding, perhaps, but a wordless acknowledgement. This was happening. Zahra and Kieran were choosing their own path, writing their own story. And nothing, not even Valencia's disapproval or manipulations, could change that. As I placed Zahra's hand in Kieran's, as I took my seat in the front row directly across from Valencia, as I watched these two young people pledge their lives to each other against the backdrop of my family's historic home, I felt a profound sense of rightness settle over me. Family wasn't just biology or obligation. It was choice, love, forgiveness, the willingness to see beyond facades and pretenses to the truth beneath. It was the courage to stand firm in that truth, even when it meant making difficult or unpopular decisions. Like canceling a wedding venue I had already paid for, knowing that sometimes love means holding those we cherish accountable when they lose their way. As Zahra and Kieran sealed their vows with a kiss, as the gathered guests erupted in applause, I caught a glimpse of Valencia's face. For just a moment, her carefully constructed mask slipped, revealing not anger or resentment, but something that looked almost like longing. Then it was gone, replaced once more by cool composure as she rose with the other guests. The reception that followed in Wildwood's glass conservatory was everything Zahra and Kieran had hoped for. Intimate, joyful, filled with genuine moments rather than performative displays. The fairy lights twinkled overhead like captured stars, the seasonal blooms from the estate gardens perfumed the air, and the carefully selected string quartet played softly as guests mingled and celebrated. I was standing near the dessert table, watching Zahra and Kieran share their first dance, when a familiar voice spoke behind me. "You've won, Lorelei. I hope you're satisfied." I turned to find Valencia, elegant in midnight blue, a flute of champagne clutched perhaps a bit too tightly in her manicured hand. "This isn't about winning or losing," I replied calmly. "It's about Zahra and Kieran's happiness." She gave a brittle laugh. "Please. It's about you asserting control, revealing your secret wealth and connections at the perfect dramatic moment. Well played. The devoted, self-sacrificing mother gets her vindication at last." I studied her for a moment, seeing beyond the bitterness to something deeper. Pain, perhaps. Fear, certainly. "Is that really how you see this, Valencia? As some kind of competition?" "Isn't everything?" she countered. "Status, influence, our children's accomplishments. It's all part of the game." "Not for me," I said simply. "It never was." "Then why hide your background all these years? Why pretend to be just a struggling nurse living in that modest little house, driving that embarrassing car?" I sighed. Because none of those things, the house, the car, the job, were pretense. They were choices. Conscious choices about the life I wanted to live and the values I wanted to instill in my daughter. "Values," she scoffed. "Like lying about her origins, about your family?" "I made mistakes," I acknowledged. "But my intentions were good. Can you say the same about your attempts to drive a wedge between Zahra and me?" Valencia's gaze drifted to where Zahra and Kieran were now laughing with friends, their faces alight with joy. "I only wanted what was best for my son," she said. But the conviction in her voice had wavered. "No," I corrected gently. You wanted what reflected best on you. There's a difference. She didn't respond immediately, something vulnerable flickering across her face before she masked it. Alexander would have loved this place, she said abruptly, the non sequitur catching me off guard. Your brother? I asked carefully. She nodded, her eyes scanning the soaring glass ceiling, the historic architecture. He had a romantic soul, beneath all that Blackwood polish, always talking about history and legacy and beauty that transcends time. Her voice softened with memory. He was the best of us, you know, before the accident. My heart raced. Was this a coincidence, or did she somehow know? I'm sorry for your loss, I said, meaning it. Losing someone you love changes you forever. Yes, she agreed, a rare moment of genuine emotion breaking through. It does. Before I could respond, Kieran appeared at his mother's side. Mom, Dad's looking for you. The photographer wants family portraits by the fountain. Valencia straightened, composure returning. Of course. She glanced at me one last time. This isn't over, Lorelei. As she walked away, Kieran gave me an apologetic smile. Whatever she said, I'm sorry. I shook my head. Don't be. Today isn't about Valencia or me. It's about you and Zahra. He surprised me by leaning in to kiss my cheek. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. For raising the most amazing woman I've ever known. For standing up for her even when it meant standing against us. For giving us all this. He gestured to the beautiful space around us. You make her happy, I replied simply. That's all I've ever wanted. As the evening progressed, I found myself drifting between conversations, accepting congratulations and compliments on the venue with a strange mix of pride and detachment. This world, Wildwood, the Herondale legacy, the wealth and privilege, had been part of my history, but it wasn't who I was. Not anymore. Perhaps it never had been. You look pensive, observed Dr. Elias Montgomery, appearing at my side with 2 flutes of champagne. He handed one to me. Having regrets? I shook my head. Not about the wedding. It's perfect. Zahra and Kieran are happy. That's what matters. But, he prompted, knowing me too well, but I'm wondering if I did the right thing, revealing everything the way I did. The timing, the drama of it all. Sometimes I feel like I played right into Valencia's narrative about me. Elias considered this. Perhaps, but sometimes the truth needs a dramatic entrance to be heard over the lies that preceded it. I smiled at that. When did you get so philosophical? Somewhere between my second divorce and my third scotch, he quipped, making me laugh despite myself. Our conversation was interrupted by the clinking of a knife against glass. Kieran stood in the center of the room, calling for attention. I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate with Zahra and me, he began, his voice warm and steady. But there's someone I need to thank especially. He turned, searching the crowd until his eyes found me. Lorelei. Zahra moved. To stand beside him, reaching for his hand. Mom, would you join us? Surprised, I handed my champagne to Elias and made my way through the guests to where the newlyweds stood. Zahra and I wanted to share something with all of you, Kieran continued once I reached them. Something about the incredible woman who made this day possible, and I don't just mean the venue. Zahra took over, her eyes bright with emotion. Many of you know my mother as a pediatric nurse, someone who has dedicated her life to caring for children and families in their most vulnerable moments. What you might not know is that she's also an artist, a scholar, and the most selfless person I've ever known. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. Zahra, please. No, Mom, let me finish, she insisted gently. A few months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I took for granted the one person who has always been there for me. The one person who has sacrificed everything to give me the best possible life. Kieran squeezed her hand supportively. And when we lost our original wedding venue, or thought we had, Lorelei stepped in to offer us something even more meaningful. A place that represents not just luxury or status, but family history, personal connection, and enduring love. What we didn't know until recently, Zahra continued, is that my mother could have given me all of this. She gestured to the grandeur around us. From the beginning. She could have raised me with privilege and wealth and social connections. Instead, she chose to give me something far more valuable: integrity, compassion, and the understanding that true worth has nothing to do with money or status. Tears pricked my eyes as she spoke. Around us, guests had fallen silent, captivated by her words and the obvious emotion behind them. So today, Zahra concluded, Kieran and I want to honor my mother with a special gift. At her nod, Freya appeared, carrying a large object covered in cream-colored silk. With a flourish, she pulled away the covering to reveal a painting. My painting. The one I had been working on in my studio, of Wildwood Chateau as seen from the lake shore. Except, it wasn't exactly as I had left it. The painting had been completed, the details refined, the lighting perfected in a way that captured the essence of the place perfectly. You finished it, I breathed, stunned. Actually, Zahra did, Kieran explained. She wanted it to be ready. For today, to hang in the main hall of Wildwood as a symbol of your return to your roots and of the new chapter we're all beginning together. Zahra's eyes shimmered with tears. You always encouraged my art, Mom, even when it meant sacrificing your own. I thought it was time for us to create something beautiful together. I was speechless, overwhelmed by the gesture and what it represented. My daughter, who had inherited not my blood, but my passion for beauty and creativity, had completed the work I had begun. She had taken up the brush where I had set it down, adding her vision to mine to create something neither of us could have, achieved alone. It was, I realized, the perfect metaphor for our relationship, for parenthood itself. It's magnificent, I finally managed, pulling her into an embrace. Thank you. The gathered guests applauded, many wiping away tears at the emotional moment. Even Valencia, I noticed from the corner of my eye, seemed moved despite herself. There's more, Kieran said when the applause had died down. Zahra and I have been talking, and we've made a decision about our future. Zahra nodded, her face radiant with certainty. We've decided not to take the job offers in Chicago after all. This was news to me. For months, they had been planning to relocate after the wedding, Kieran to a prestigious architectural firm, and Zahra to a gallery that had offered to represent her work. But those were amazing opportunities, I said, confused. They were, Kieran agreed, but we've received even more interesting offers locally. From whom? I asked. Zahra and Kieran exchanged glances, as if deciding who should explain. Finally, Zahra spoke. From you, Mom, or rather, from the Herondale Family Trust. Now I was completely lost. I don't understand. Thaddeus approached us last week, Kieran explained. He mentioned that the trust has been looking for someone to oversee the restoration and management of the historic properties, including Wildwood and the main estate. Someone with an understanding of architecture, history, and artistic vision. And someone with a personal connection to the Herondale legacy, Zahra added meaningfully. I stared at them, realization dawning. You're going to stay. To work for the family trust. With your blessing, Kieran said. It would mean working closely with you, helping to preserve and share this incredible heritage. Zahra could establish her studio here, I could apply my architectural training to the restoration projects, and together we could open more of the estate to the public for educational and cultural events. It's perfect for us, Zahra said earnestly, but only if you're comfortable with it. This has been your sanctuary, your private connection to your past. We don't want to intrude on that. I was momentarily overwhelmed by the implications. For so long, I had kept my two worlds separate, my life with Zahra in Clearwater Cove, and my inherited legacy at Wildwood. The thought of them merging, of my daughter and son-in-law becoming part of the Herondale story, not just by marriage, but by vocation, was both exhilarating and terrifying. You wouldn't be intruding, I said finally. You would be coming home. The joy that bloomed on Zahra's face told me everything I needed to know. This was right. All of it. The revelations, the confrontations, the painful truths, and healing, reconciliations had led us to exactly where we were meant to be. The band struck up a new song, and Kieran extended his hand to me. May I have this dance, mother-in-law? As we moved across the dance floor, I caught sight of Valencia watching from the sidelines, her expression unreadable. For a moment, our eyes met, and I thought I saw something soften in her gaze. Not surrender, not exactly, but perhaps a reluctant recognition that there was room in her son's life. In her life, for more than one kind of mother, more than one definition of family. The night continued, a blur of laughter and tears and dancing. As the last guests departed and the newlyweds prepared to leave for their honeymoon suite at a nearby luxury hotel, their actual honeymoon, a tour of European art museums, would begin. The following week, Zahra pulled me aside for one final private moment. I read the letter again, she said softly. From Ivy. There was something in it I missed the first time. Oh? I tried to keep my voice casual, though my heart had begun to race. She mentioned the baby's father. She called him A. Said he was kind and creative and would never know about me. Zahra's eyes searched mine. A for Alexander? I nodded slowly. Yes. Did you know? When you adopted me, did you know who my biological father was? No, I said truthfully. Not then. I learned later, when I happened to see a photograph of Alexander in Valencia's home during a charity event. The resemblance between him and you at that age was striking. I did some discreet research afterward and confirmed my suspicions, but by then Alexander had already died. Zahra absorbed this in silence for a moment. Does it ever feel strange to you? That I ended up marrying into the family I came from? Like some cosmic full circle? Life is full of strange symmetries, I acknowledged. But what matters isn't where you started, or even the path you took to get here. What matters is that you found love, found yourself, and found your way home. In all senses of the word. She embraced me tightly. I love you, Mom, for everything you are, everything you've done, everything you've taught me. I love you too, I whispered, holding her close. More than you'll ever know until you have children of your own. As she pulled away, a mischievous smile played at her lips. Speaking of which, Kieran and I are thinking of starting a family sooner rather than later. How do you feel about being called Grandma? I laughed, joy bubbling up inside me. I feel like it's exactly the right next chapter in our story. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Wildwood stood silent under the stars, I wandered. Through the familiar halls alone. So much had changed in the past few months. Relationships transformed, secrets revealed, new paths forged from the ashes of misunderstanding and pain. I found myself in the library, standing before the portrait of my grandmother Vivienne, regal and formidable and utterly herself. I think I finally understand what you were trying to teach me, I told her painted image. About legacy, about wealth, about what truly matters in this life. It's not the houses or the money or the family name. It's the choices we make, the love we give, the truths we honor even when they're difficult. The portrait offered no response, of course, but I could almost hear my grandmother's voice in my memory. The finest inheritance you can leave your children isn't money, Lorelei. It's the courage to live authentically and the wisdom to recognize what truly has value. I smiled, feeling a sense of completion, of having come full circle in my own journey. From the young woman who had walked away from this world to build something meaningful on her own terms, to the mother who had returned to reclaim her heritage when it mattered most, I had always been guided by the same core values: love, truth, integrity. And now, as I looked toward the future, a future that would include working alongside Zahra and Kieran to preserve and share the Herondale legacy, perhaps even welcoming grandchildren to these hallowed halls, I felt ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a text from Elias. "The mother of the bride deserves a champagne nightcap. Meet me on the terrace?" I smiled, typing back a quick "on my way" before taking one last look around the library. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, Valencia's continued presence in our lives, the complications of family and business, intertwining, the inevitable adjustments as Zahra and Kieran settled into their new roles. Tonight was for celebration, for gratitude, for joy. When I stepped onto the moonlit terrace and saw Elias waiting with 2 glasses and that familiar warm smile, I felt the final piece of my heart slide into place. The woman who had once canceled a wedding venue she had already paid for had found something far more valuable in the process. She had found herself again. The years that followed the wedding brought changes both expected and surprising. Zahra and Kieran threw themselves into their new roles with the Herondale Trust, breathing fresh life into the historic properties with innovative programming that honored tradition while embracing modern sensibilities. Under their guidance, Wildwood Shadow became not just a wedding venue, but a cultural center, hosting art exhibitions, literary festivals, and educational workshops for children from all backgrounds. I divided my time between continuing my nursing work. I couldn't imagine leaving the children and families who had become such an important part of my life, and collaborating with Zahra and Kieran on various trust projects. My particular focus became a scholarship program for young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, offering them studio space and mentorship at Wildwood. 6 months after the wedding, Zahra shared the news I had been secretly hoping for. She was pregnant. Despite the joy of the moment, I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. "We've done all the genetic testing," she assured me quickly. "Everything looks perfect. The doctors said the second-cousin relationship poses no increased risks." I squeezed her hand. "I never doubted it would be fine. Are you happy?" Her face softened, a glow of wonder replacing the worry. "Happier than I ever thought possible. Kieran is over the moon. He's already designing the nursery." "And Valencia?" I asked carefully. "Have you told her yet?" Zahra's expression grew more complex. "Not yet, but we're having dinner with his parents this weekend. We'll tell them then." Valencia's relationship with all of us remained complicated. After the wedding, she had maintained a cool distance for several months, clearly struggling to accept the new family dynamic. But when Kieran and Zahra announced their decision to work for the Herondale Trust rather than move to Chicago, something shifted. Perhaps it was the realization that fighting against me meant pushing away her son. Perhaps it was simple practicality. Whatever the reason, she had begun making tentative overtures toward reconciliation. Small gestures at first, sending flowers on my birthday. How she had obtained the date, I never discovered. Inviting me to a charity luncheon she was hosting, asking my opinion on art acquisitions for their family home. Then larger ones, suggesting we all spend Thanksgiving together, offering to help with restoration research for one of the Herondale properties, even defending me to a gossipy acquaintance who had made a snide remark about my mysterious past. It wasn't friendship exactly. I doubted we would ever truly be friends. But it was a truce, negotiated carefully through unspoken agreements and mutual commitment to the happiness of our shared family members. The pregnancy announcement, however, would be a new test of our fragile peace. This child would be Valencia's grandchild, but also mine. More than that, this child would unknowingly represent the continuation of two bloodlines that had intersected in ways Valencia could never know. "Would you like me to be there when you tell them?" I offered. "For moral support?" Zahra considered. "This. I think we need to do it ourselves, but thank you." She hesitated. "Actually, there is something you could do for me." "Name it," I said immediately. "Would you paint something for the nursery? Something of wildwood, maybe the rose garden, or the lake? I want the baby to grow up surrounded by your art, by our shared history." Tears pricked my eyes. I would be honored. I began work on the painting that very day, envisioning something that captured not just the physical beauty of wildwood, but its spirit, the layers of history, the enduring legacy, the promise of continuity and renewal. As my brush moved across the canvas, I thought about the grandchild who would soon enter our lives, connecting generations in ways both known and unknown. The dinner with Valencia and her husband went better than anyone could have expected. According to Zahra's report, Valencia had been momentarily speechless at the news, then had burst into tears. Of joy, Zahra hastened to add. She kept saying it was like Alexander was somehow present again, Zahra told me later, her voice hushed with the weight of the irony neither of us could acknowledge. That she could see him in Kieran sometimes, and now his legacy would continue through our child. If only she knew how true that statement was. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That family legacies are complicated and beautiful things," Zahra replied. "That children carry forward not just genetic traits but values, stories, traditions. And that this baby would be lucky to have two strong grandmothers with very different gifts to share." I smiled at her diplomatic answer. "Well done." "Oh, and she wants to host the baby shower," Zahra added with a wry grimace. "At their country club, with all her friends. I didn't have the heart to say no." I laughed. "Some battles aren't worth fighting. Let her have the shower. We'll have the baby for the rest of its life." In the end, we compromised. The shower would be at Wildwood, co-hosted by Valencia and me, with a guest list that included both our circles. It was an unlikely collaboration, but somehow it worked. Valencia handled the floral arrangements and catering with her usual flair for luxury, while I focused on making the event warm and personal, with handcrafted decorations and thoughtful party favors. The day of the shower arrived, and Wildwood was transformed into a celebration of new life. The weather cooperated beautifully, allowing us to set up in the rose garden where Zahra and Kieran had exchanged their vows less than a year before. Valencia and I maintained a cordial distance throughout most of the preparations, each of us commanding our own territories with minimal overlap. But as guests began to arrive, my hospital colleagues mingling with Valencia's country club friends, Kieran's architectural mentors chatting with Zahra's artist community, I found myself standing beside Valencia at the entrance, greeting arrivals, together as if we'd been doing it for years. "This is actually nice," she said during a brief lull, sounding almost surprised by her own assessment. "The garden looks beautiful." "Thank you," I replied. "The caterers did an amazing job with the menu." She nodded, accepting the compliment with characteristic poise. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Lorelei, I've been meaning to ask you something." I steeled myself. "Yes?" "The painting in the main hall, the one Zahra completed for the wedding, it's extraordinary." She paused. "Did you teach her to paint like that?" The question caught me off guard. I encouraged her interest in art. "From a young age," I said carefully. "But her talent is her own. Why do you ask?" Valencia's gaze drifted toward where Zahra sat in a flower-bedecked chair, radiant in her pregnancy, her hands resting protectively over her growing belly as she laughed at something Kieran was saying. "Because it reminds me of someone," she said softly. "The brushwork, the way she captures light. It's remarkably similar to my brother's style. Alexander was quite talented, though few people knew it. He considered art a private passion, not meant for public consumption. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. Artistic sensibilities can appear in unexpected places, I offered. Like musical aptitude or mathematical ability. Sometimes it's training, sometimes it's simply innate. Valencia studied me. For a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Yes, she said finally. I suppose you're right. Before I could respond, Freya approached, elegant in an emerald green dress that complemented her auburn hair. The cake has arrived, she announced, and it's spectacular. Valencia excused herself to inspect the delivery, leaving me with Freya, who gave me a knowing look. That was a close one, she murmured. Too close, I agreed. Do you think she suspects? Freya shook her head. No, Valencia sees what she wants to see. Right now, she wants to see her brother's artistic legacy living on through some mystical family connection. The truth is too complicated, too messy for her carefully constructed worldview. Let's hope it stays that way, I said, watching as Valencia directed the placement of the elaborate cake with her usual authoritative flair. Some secrets are better kept, Freya agreed, for everyone's sake. The shower proceeded beautifully, a harmonious blend of elegance and warmth that seemed to mirror the evolving dynamic between our families. Valencia and I found ourselves side by side again during the gift opening, both of us watching with grandmotherly pride as Zahra unwrapped tiny clothes and handcrafted toys. When it came time for my gift, I brought forward a large wrapped package that clearly wasn't baby clothes. Zahra opened it carefully, gasping when she saw what was inside. The painting I had been working on for the nursery. It depicted wildwood. At dawn, the chateau bathed in golden light, the gardens alive with color, and the lake reflecting a sky full of possibility. Mom, it's perfect, she breathed. It's everything I hoped for. Valencia leaned forward to see better, her critical eye appraising the work. It's quite good, she said, which from her was high praise indeed. The baby will grow up with a sense of place, of heritage. That's the idea, I agreed, surprised to find myself sharing a moment of genuine connection with her. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to depart, Valencia approached me again, this time with a small package in hand. I wanted to give you this, she said, uncharacteristically hesitant. Separately from the shower gifts. Surprised, I accepted the package and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a silver picture frame, antique by the look of it, containing a photograph I had never seen. A young man with Kieran's jawline and Zahra's eyes, holding a paintbrush and smiling at the camera with unguarded joy. Alexander, Valencia said softly. In his studio at the lake house, the summer before the accident. I found it recently while going through some old albums. I stared at the photograph, seeing the undeniable resemblance to my daughter, the genetic connection that had come full circle in ways Valencia could never comprehend. Why are you giving this to me? I asked, genuinely confused. She didn't answer directly. He would have liked you, I think. Your straightforwardness, your lack of pretension. He always said I was too concerned with appearances. Thank you, I said, not knowing what else to say. It's a thoughtful gift. Valencia nodded, seeming satisfied with my response. The baby should know about both sides of its family, all the branches of its family tree. She smiled thinly. Even the ones that don't quite match the official genealogy. With that cryptic statement, she turned and walked away, leaving me frozen in place, the photograph of Alexander heavy in my hands. Did she know? Had she somehow discovered the truth about Zahra's parentage? Or was this simply Valencia's way of acknowledging that family connections transcended biology? That Zahra was as much Kieran's family now as if they had shared blood all along? I never got a definitive answer. Valencia never mentioned Alexander again, never made another reference to family trees or genetic inheritance. But she did become, to everyone's surprise, a devoted and doting grandmother when little Vivienne. Alexandra Blackwood arrived 3 months later, named for both our family matriarchs, my grandmother and Valencia's mother. Vivienne was a perfect blend of her parents, with Kieran's thoughtful temperament and Zahra's artistic sensitivity evident, even in infancy. Both Valencia and I fell head over heels in love with her, finding in our shared adoration of this tiny new life a common ground we had never before managed to discover. We would never be friends in the conventional sense. We came from different worlds, held different values, approached life from fundamentally opposite perspectives. But in Vivienne, we found a reason to set aside our differences, to build a kind of peace that, while sometimes uneasy, was genuine in its commitment to her well-being and happiness. 5 years after the wedding that had nearly torn our families apart, I stood in the great hall of Wildwood Chateau, watching as Zahra and Kieran's second child, a son they had named Elias Thaddeus, toddled across the marble floor, his sister Vivienne patiently guiding his wobbly steps. Nearby, Valencia adjusted the flower arrangement on the antique sideboard, her critical eye for detail unchanged, though her sharp edges had softened somewhat with grandmotherhood. "He's determined, isn't he?" she observed, watching as little Elias pushed away his sister's helping hands to stand on his own. "Just like his mother," I agreed. Valencia glanced at me, a ghost of a smile playing at her lips. "And his grandmother, I suspect." I accepted the veiled compliment with a nod. "Determination runs in the family." "Indeed it does," she murmured, her gaze drifting to the portrait above the fireplace. "My grandmother Vivienne, the original matriarch of Wildwood, whose legacy lived on through all of us in different ways." Outside on the terrace, Zahra was setting up her easel, preparing to teach Vivienne her first proper painting lesson. Kieran worked nearby, sketching plans for the renovation of the old stables into a community arts center, a project that had become his passion. Through the open doors, I could hear their laughter, their gentle bickering, their easy togetherness. "They're happy," Valencia said, following my gaze. "You did that." "We all did," I corrected, "in our own ways." She considered this, then nodded once, acknowledging the truth of it. "I suppose we did." It wasn't an apology for the past or a promise for the future. It was simply recognition of where we now stood. Two women who had fought fiercely for their visions of family, who had made mistakes and sacrifices along the way, and who had ultimately found a kind of peace in the shared love of the next generation. As I watched my grandchildren playing in the home that had once been my childhood refuge, as I saw my daughter teaching her own child the art that had brought us back together, I thought about the long, winding path that had led us here. Every choice, every secret, every confrontation and reconciliation had shaped this moment, this family, this legacy, including the decision to cancel a wedding venue I had already paid for, a seemingly impulsive act that had unleashed truths, long buried and set in motion changes none of us could have anticipated. It hadn't been about the money, or even about asserting control. It had been about honoring the truth of who we were, all of us, beneath the surfaces we presented to the world. And in doing so, we had found our way home. 10 years had passed since that pivotal wedding day that changed everything. Sitting in my office at Wildwood Chateau, I found myself surrounded by photographs chronicling our journey. Vivienne, now a poised 10-year-old with her mother's artistic talent and her father's analytical mind. 8-year-old Elias, whose laughter could brighten even the gloomiest day. And 3-year-old Caroline, named after my mother, whose spirit seemed to embody the very essence of Wildwood itself. An elegant cream envelope sat on my desk, Valencia's invitation to the 40th anniversary gala for the Blackwood Foundation. The handwritten note at the bottom read simply, "Your presence is requested, both as Herondale and as family. V." I traced the elegant script with my fingertip, marveling at our transformation from bitter enemies to reluctant allies. We would never be close friends. Our perspectives on life remained fundamentally different. But we had found common ground in our shared love for Zahra and Kieran's children, and occasionally, we even appreciated each other's strengths. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called. Dr. Elias Montgomery entered, his salt and pepper hair mostly silver now, but his eyes still sharp and kind. "Ready for our lunch date?" he asked, tapping his watch with mock impatience. I smiled, gathering my purse. "Sorry, I was distracted by Valencia's invitation." "Are you going?" he asked as we descended the grand staircase together. "I think I should," I replied, "for Kieran's sake if nothing else. And it would be hypocritical to preach family reconciliation while avoiding my daughter's mother-in-law." Outside, the September air carried autumn's first crispness. Wildwood's gardens were transitioning to their fall palette, rich golds, deep russets, and warm ambers replacing summer's vibrant hues. We strolled down the familiar path toward the lake, where our weekly picnic awaited on the weathered dock. "The board approved the scholarship program," I told Elias as we settled onto the bench. "Starting next spring, we'll offer full support for 5 young artists from underserved communities to live and work at Wildwood for a year. Your grandmother would be proud," he said warmly. "I think she would," I agreed, picturing Vivian Herondale's imposing portrait that still hung above the library fireplace. She had been a product of her time and class in many ways, but she had also believed passionately in art's power to transform lives. We ate in comfortable silence, watching swans glide across the lake's mirrored surface. Elias and I had settled into a relationship that defied conventional labels. Deeper than friendship, less structured than romance, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Neither of us felt compelled to define it further, or push for traditional commitments. We were content with what we had found together, later in life than either of us had expected. "Have you told Zahra about Ivy's letter yet?" he asked eventually. I sighed, setting down my sandwich. "No, I keep finding reasons to wait." 6 months ago, a law firm in Boston had forwarded a letter from Ivy Gardner, Zahra's birth mother. After 29 years of silence, she had reached out, asking if Zahra would be open to communication. Not a meeting, just an exchange of letters to begin with. I had kept the letter to myself, unsure how to proceed. Zahra was happy, settled, secure in her identity. Would introducing this new element disrupt the balance we had all worked so hard to achieve? Or was I simply afraid of losing some essential part of my relationship with my daughter? "She deserves to know," Elias said gently. "She's not a child anymore, Lori. She's a mother herself. Trust her to handle this." "I know you're right," I admitted. "It's just so complicated with the Alexander connection." "Have you considered that Valencia might already know? That photograph she gave you years ago, her cryptic comments? She's an intelligent woman." Before I could respond, the sound of running footsteps made us turn. Vivian was racing toward us, her dark curls flying, Caroline toddling behind her with Zahra following at a more sedate pace. "Grandma! Dr. Elias!" Vivian called breathlessly. "Mom says you have to come quick. Dad found something in the old boathouse. Some kind of hidden room with paintings inside." I exchanged a glance with Elias. "What kind of paintings?" "Old ones," Vivian replied, eyes wide with excitement. "Dad says they might be really important." "Kieran was measuring for the renovation plans and found a concealed door," Zahra explained as she reached us, lifting Caroline into her arms. "There's a whole collection inside, at least 24 canvases. They look like they might be from the 1940s or 50s. My heart quickened. The boathouse had been scheduled for renovation as part of Kieran's ongoing restoration of Wildwood. It had been unused for decades, since long before my time. We hurried to the lakeside structure where Kieran waited, dust smudging his usually impeccable appearance, excitement evident in his expression. "Lorelei, I think we've found Alexander Blackwood's lost paintings," he said without preamble. The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Zahra's eyes flickered to mine, then to the children, a silent question about what could be safely discussed in their presence. "Vivienne, take Caroline to feed the ducks," Zahra instructed smoothly. "Elias will go with you." Once the children were safely out of earshot, Kieran led us through the boathouse to what had appeared to be a solid wall, but now revealed a narrow door. Beyond it lay a small room illuminated by battery-powered work lights. Dust-covered canvases leaned against, the walls apparently untouched for decades. "I pulled back one cover," Kieran explained, gesturing to a painting propped on an old workbench. "The style was unmistakable. Then I found this." He handed me a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. Inside, in flowing, elegant handwriting, were dated entries spanning from 1950 to 1952. The name inscribed on the inside cover made my breath catch. Alexander Blackwood. "He would have been 18, I murmured, flipping through the brittle pages. "The entries talk about coming here to paint in secret," Kieran continued. "Apparently he befriended the caretaker's son, who let him use this space. There was some kind of feud between the families back then." I nodded slowly. "My grandmother mentioned it once. Something about a business deal gone wrong in the 1930s. The Blackwoods and Herondales didn't socialize for at least a generation afterward." "So he was painting here in secret," Zahra mused, carefully pulling back another dust cloth to reveal a stunning landscape. Wildwood at sunset. "But why hide the paintings? And why were they never found?" "According to the journal, his father discovered his art and was furious," Kieran explained. "Thought it was a waste of time, unbecoming of a Blackwood man. Alexander hid his best work here for safekeeping, planning to retrieve it when he went to college. But then he died in 1975, I finished quietly. The boating accident." We stood in silence, absorbing the implications of this discovery. These weren't just any paintings. They were works created by Alexander Blackwood, Zahra's biological father, though only the three of us in this room knew that truth. Valencia's beloved brother, Kieran's uncle, the ghost whose DNA had unknowingly circled back through our intertwined family trees. "What do we do with them?" Zahra asked. "They technically belong to the Blackwood family, don't they?" I leafed through the journal, stopping at the final entry dated August 15th, 1952. Alexander had written, "When I have my own family someday, I will show them these paintings. I will teach my children that beauty matters, that creating matters, that following your passion matters, no matter what my father says. These canvases are my legacy, my true self, preserved for those who will come after me." My heart ached reading those words, knowing Alexander had never had the chance to share his art with his children, at least not knowingly. Yet here was Zahra, his biological daughter, an artist herself, standing amidst her father's hidden legacy. "We need to tell Valencia," I said finally. "Whatever our past differences, she deserves to know about this. Alexander was her brother. These paintings are part of her family history too." That evening, after securing the boathouse and cataloging its contents, I made a difficult phone call. Valencia answered promptly, her voice crisp and professional. "Lorelei," she said, surprise evident in her tone. "I was just addressing your gala invitation." "Yes, I'll be there," I replied. "But that's not why I'm calling. Something has been discovered at Wildwood that you need to see. It concerns Alexander." A sharp intake of breath. "My brother?" "Yes, Kieran found some of his paintings. And a journal. They've been hidden in the old boathouse for over 70 years. After a moment of heavy silence, she said simply, "I'll be there tomorrow morning." True to her word, Valencia arrived precisely at 9 the next day. I met her at the entrance, noting the tension in her shoulders, the careful neutrality of her expression. "Thank you for coming," I said, leading her through the house and toward the gardens. "Where are the paintings?" she asked, dispensing with pleasantries. "We've moved them to the conservatory for better light. Kieran is documenting everything before we decide next steps." As we walked, I noticed her glancing around at Wildwood's beauty, perhaps seeing it through new eyes, knowing her brother had spent time here in secret. "He loved this place," I said softly. "His journal is full of descriptions, the quality of light, the changing seasons, the peace he found here." "He never mentioned it," Valencia replied, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Not once. We were close, or so I thought." "We all have our secrets," I said. "Sometimes we keep things hidden to protect others, or ourselves." She gave me a sharp look. "Is that what you did? When you hid your connection to the Herondale family from Zahra all those years?" "Yes," I admitted. Though in retrospect, I'm not sure who I was really protecting. In the conservatory, Kieran was carefully photographing each canvas while Zahra made notes. They looked up as we entered, Kieran immediately moving to greet his mother with a kiss on the cheek. Valencia's composure slipped visibly as she caught sight of the first painting, a young woman sitting by the lake, her face in profile, sunlight dappling her dark hair. "Margaret," she whispered, approaching the canvas with reverent steps. "His first girlfriend." One by one, Kieran showed his mother the recovered paintings, landscapes, portraits, still lifes, each bearing the unmistakable mark of Alexander's developing style. Valencia moved among them in a daze, occasionally reaching out as if to touch, a brushstroke before pulling her hand back. When she came to the journal, she hesitated. "May I?" I nodded, and she opened it carefully, her fingers tracing her brother's handwriting. Tears filled her eyes as she read. "He writes about you," she said suddenly, looking up at me. "Or rather, about a little girl he sometimes saw playing in the gardens. Caroline's daughter, he calls her. The serious child with the sketchbook who doesn't know I'm watching her draw." Valencia's gaze sharpened. "That was you, wasn't it?" I nodded, memory stirring. "I used to sketch in the rose garden. I don't remember ever seeing him." "He was good at staying hidden when he wanted to be," Valencia said with a sad smile. "Our father was very strict about where we could go, who we could associate with. The Herondales were specifically off limits." She continued reading, her expression shifting subtly. When she finished, she closed the journal gently. "Thank you for showing me these," she said formally, emotions once again under careful control. "They should be preserved properly, exhibited perhaps. Alexander deserves to be recognized for his talent." "We thought the same," Kieran agreed. "But we wanted to consult you first." Valencia nodded thoughtfully. "I propose a joint exhibition, sponsored by both the Blackwood Foundation and the Herondale Trust. Let these paintings serve as a bridge between our families, just as your marriage has done." It was an elegant solution, and for a moment I believed we might navigate this discovery without disturbing our delicate balance of secrets. Then Valencia turned to me, her gaze direct and unwavering. "There's something else we need to discuss," she said. "Something I've suspected for years but never had the courage to confront directly." My heart froze. Beside me, I felt Zahra tense, Kieran shifting protectively closer to his wife. "Perhaps we should speak privately," I suggested. "No," Valencia said firmly. "What I have to say concerns all of us. Alexander had a child, didn't he? A child he never knew about." The conservatory fell silent, the only sound the distant calls of birds in the garden. I considered my options and discarded them all. We had come too far, built too much together to retreat into lies now. Yes, I said simply. He did. Valencia nodded, as if confirming something long suspected. And that child was Zahra. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Zahra stepped forward. How long have you known? Valencia's gaze softened. I began to suspect the first time I saw you paint. There was something in the way you held the brush, the way you captured light. It reminded me powerfully of Alexander. Then I noticed other similarities. Your laugh, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. Why didn't you say anything? Kieran asked, his arm around Zahra's waist. Because I wasn't certain, Valencia replied. And because if it was true, it meant you two were related. Second cousins. I was afraid of what that might mean for your relationship, for any children you might have. We've taken all the necessary medical precautions, I assured her. Extensive genetic counseling before each pregnancy. Valencia nodded, visibly relieved. And the birth mother? Who was she? Her name is Ivy Gardner, I said carefully. She was 16 when Zahra was born. Alexander was her first boyfriend. When she discovered she was pregnant, she chose adoption. Ivy, Valencia repeated softly. Yes, I remember her. A quiet girl, artistic like Alexander. She turned to Zahra. Have you ever met her? No, Zahra replied, glancing at me. I took a deep breath. She's reached out recently, after all these years. She'd like to establish contact, if Zahra is willing. Valencia absorbed this with remarkable composure. I see. I would like to meet her as well, if possible. To talk about Alexander, about the time they shared. This wasn't the reaction I had expected. The Valencia I had first met, judgmental, status-conscious, controlling, would have been outraged at such a messy family secret. But the woman before, me, had been shaped by a decade of shared experiences, by the love of her grandchildren, by the wisdom that comes from living through profound change. Are you angry? Zahra asked hesitantly. About not being told sooner? Valencia considered. This seriously. I'm sad, she said finally. Sad that Alexander never knew he had a daughter. Sad that we lost so many years when you could have been part of our family from the beginning. But no, I'm not angry. Life is too short for anger, especially when it comes to family. She reached out and took Zahra's hand, then mine, forming a circle of connection. Alexander's journal ends with his hope that someday his children would see these paintings, would understand the legacy he wanted to leave. His daughter not only saw his work, but inherited his talent, and his grandchildren are growing up surrounded by beauty and creativity, just as he would have wanted. What happens now? Kieran asked quietly. Valencia straightened her shoulders. Now we move forward, together. We organize the exhibition. We invite Ivy Gardner to be part of it, if she wishes. We complete the circle that began when too young. People from feuding families found connection through art and love. She turned to me, something like respect in her eyes. And we acknowledge that family is not just about blood or names or social standing. It's about choices, about commitment, about showing up even when it's difficult. A faint smile touched her lips. Even when it means canceling a wedding venue you've already paid for, because you believe your daughter deserves better. I returned, her smile, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. Even then, in the weeks that followed, our unlikely alliance strengthened as we prepared Alexander's paintings for public viewing. The exhibition, titled Hidden Legacy, The Recovered Art of Alexander Blackwood, was scheduled to coincide with the Blackwood Foundation's anniversary gala. On opening night, I stood with Zahra in the quiet room behind the gallery, making final adjustments to her necklace, a vintage piece that had belonged to my grandmother. Are you ready? I asked softly. Zahra took a deep breath. To meet my birth mother after 30 years? To stand beside Valencia as equals? No, I'm not ready at all, but I'm doing it anyway. I squeezed her hand. That's my girl. We stepped into the gallery together, immediately surrounded by excited conversation. The space was filled with an eclectic mix. Valencia's society, friends, local artists and critics, Herondale Trust board members, and family friends. At the center stood Valencia, directing staff with her usual precision. The exhibition was a triumph. Alexander's artistic journey beautifully presented, from his earliest tentative works to the sophisticated landscapes of wildwood that showcased his maturing vision. In the center of the gallery hung a triptych of the estate, dawn, midday, and dusk, capturing the changing light and mood through a single summer day. As the evening drew to a close, Valencia gathered our closest family members for a private toast. To Alexander, she said, raising her glass. Artist, brother, father, and grandfather. May his legacy continue to bring beauty and healing to all our lives. We clinked glasses solemnly, this mismatched family bound together by secrets revealed and acceptance hard-won. Standing amidst the paintings of a man none of us had truly known in life but whose spirit had shaped all our destinies, I felt a sense of completion I had never expected to find. The journey that had begun with a canceled wedding venue, an impulsive act born of hurt and indignation, had led us through confrontation and revelation to a place of genuine connection. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and meaningful nonetheless. Sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not by blood or law or tradition, but by choice. The daily choice to love, to forgive, to begin again, to see beyond surfaces to the truth beneath. And sometimes, the most meaningful gift we can give those we love is the courage to stand firm in that truth, even when it means making difficult or unpopular decisions. Like canceling a wedding venue we've already paid for, knowing that something far more valuable awaits on the other side of that choice. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.